Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. Specifically, we have been learning Hilchos Shofar, and we begin today on Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis. I hope that we will be learning Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis as well as Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph. And we begin today on Samach Gimel Amud Beis with the beginning of Siman Tavkuf Pei Tes. Mihem haru'uyim l'tkias shofar. Who can blow shofar to be mitzi other people in their chiyuv? Who can blow shofar so that people who listen to his blowing can fulfill their obligation to hear shofar? Ubayt tes seifim, and here we have 9 seifim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, Kol she'enoi mechuyev b'davar. Anyone who doesn't have an obligation to fulfill a particular mitzvah, cannot be mitzi somebody else in their chiyuv. So in order to be mitzi somebody else in his chiyuv, you have to have a chiyuv to fulfill the same mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Aleph, She'eino mechuyev b'davar, anyone who's not chayiv, it's not obligated to a certain mitzvah, hainu she'eino mechuyev be'etzem u'kedol kamei. This means somebody who is not mechuyev in that mitzvah at all, like we're going to see shortly. For example, the Mechaber is going to speak about a cheirish shaita of a katan. A cheirish shaita or a katan, a deaf mute, or a shaita, somebody who's not mentally well, somebody who's mentally incapacitated, or a katan, or is a minor. These are all people that don't have a chiyuv to hear the shofar blown on Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, if they blow the shofar for somebody else, that person is not mekayim the mitzvah. In order for you to be mitzi somebody else in a mitzvah, you have to have a chiyuv for that mitzvah. Aval imhu mechuyev. But if we're dealing with somebody who is obligated in that mitzvah, ela sheyotza baha mitzvah, the only thing is he already fulfilled his obligation, yachal lahoitzi, he can be mitzi somebody else. So, for example, when it comes to shofar, like we said, a cheirish shait of a katan, a deaf mute, a mentally incapacitated person, or a minor, they don't have an obligation to hear the sound of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, if they pick up the shofar and blow for somebody else, that person is not yotzei the mitzvah. Because since the cheirish shait of a katan, they don't have an obligation in that mitzvah, so then they can't help somebody else be mekayim the mitzvah. But a regular person who is chayiv in the mitzvah of shofar, the only thing is, he already heard shofar on Rosh Hashanah this morning. So he was already mekayim the mitzvah. So could he be mitzi somebody else? Their answer is yes. Because even though he already was mekayim the mitzvah himself, he is a person who has the chiyuv to hear shofar. And therefore he could blow shofar for somebody else and be mitzi them. Now, the explanation of this concept, which comes from this is all based on a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, the explanation for this concept is the concept of arevus. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lo zeh. We're all connected. And therefore, if you weren't mekayim your mitzvah yet, I carry an obligation, so to speak, to help you be mekayim the mitzvah. And that's why I could be mitzi you in the mitzvah. But in order for me to be mitzi you in the mitzvah, then the maisa that I do, the act that I do, has to be a maisa mitzvah. And it's only a maisa mitzvah if I'm a person that's obligated in that mitzvah. If I'm a person who has an obligation to hear shofar, then when I blow shofar, my act of blowing shofar is considered an act of a mitzvah. It's a maisa mitzvah. But if I'm somebody who's not obligated in the mitzvah at all, then when I pick up a shofar and I blow a shofar, that's not a maisa mitzvah. That's just tooting a horn. It's not a maisa mitzvah because the mitzvah doesn't apply to me. So if somebody is a cheirish shait or a katan, when he blows the shofar, he's not doing a maisa mitzvah because the mitzvah of shofar does not apply to him. So all he's doing is tooting a horn. But if a regular person blows shofar, even if he personally was already mekayim the mitzvah of shofar, when he blows the shofar, it's a maisa mitzvah. And since Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lo zeh, he could be mitzi somebody else. Continues the Mishnah Berurah here in Ois Katan Aleph, va'afilu levarech b'shvil chaveroi. even if somebody was already Mekayim the mitzvah of shofar Rosh Hashanah morning, and now he's going to blow for somebody else, he could still make the bracha, and he could be mitzi that person even in the bracha. Okay, let's go to Siv Beis. Cherish shaita v'katan p'turim. A cherish is a deaf mute, somebody who can neither hear nor speak. A shaita is a mentally incapacitated individual. The katan is a minor child. P'turim, they are all exempt from the mitzvah of shofar. Says the Mishnah Berurah is katan beis. The katan, a minor child. Afilu imhu ben shloish esrei shana. Even a 13-year-old calls man shelo yadinon shehevi shtei saros. As long as we don't know for certain that he has already grown 2 hairs in his private areas, Eina Yachal Iskaya, so he's reached puberty, Eina Yachal Iskaya, he cannot blow shofar Lahaitzi Acherim in order to be mitzi somebody else in the mitzvah, because you have to physically be an adult in order to be mitzi somebody else in the mitzvah. And shofar is a mitzvah daraisa. To be mitzi somebody in a mitzvah daraisa, we can't just rely on the chazaka that a 13-year-old is fully physically mature. We have to know for certain that he's physically mature. Continues the Mechaber. V'cherish, when it comes to a mute, afilu medaber ve'enoi shemeya, even if it's somebody who can speak, but he cannot hear. So normally when we speak about a cherish, we're referring to a deaf mute, somebody who can neither hear nor speak. The Mechaber is telling me now, if we're talking about a cherish who can speak, but he's deaf, he cannot hear, even though he's not a full-fledged cheresh, because he can speak even though he's deaf, he also cannot be mitzi somebody in the mitzvah of shofar. Why not? They came into Eino Shemeya, because since he's deaf and he cannot hear, lav bar chiyuvahu, he personally does not have the obligation to hear shofar blowing. He's deaf, he can't hear shofar blowing, so he's not mechuyev b'davar. He doesn't have the obligation to hear shofar, and then, like we said in Sif Aleph, since he's not chayiv in shofar, he cannot be mitzi somebody else. Says the Ramah, Haga, aval shemeya ve'ena medaber. If we're speaking about a cherish who could hear but he cannot speak, mitzi acherim midei chevasan, he can be mitzi somebody else in the mitzvah of shofar. Since he can hear, he's obligated in the mitzvah. Even though he can't speak, he's still considered a bardas. Since he could hear, he's considered a bardas, and therefore he could be mitzi somebody else in the mitzvah, since he himself is obligated in the mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Gimel, the Kevin de Eino Shemeya, if we're talking about somebody who's deaf, even though he can speak, he cannot be mitzi somebody else, because since he can't hear, he's not a bar chiyuva, he's not chayiv to hear the shofar. Sharei anu mevarchin v'tzivanu l'shmaya kol shofar. What's the bracha that we make by shofar? We learned this previously. We make the bracha lishmaya kol shofar, to hear the sound of the shofar. A deaf person who can't hear cannot possibly be chayiv in the mitzvah. Excuse me, there I was just lowering the air conditioner so it doesn't make so much noise. If we're talking about a cherish who can hear but cannot speak, so such a person can be mitzi somebody else in the mitzvah because he's obligated in the mitzvah. Says the Chavetz Chaim, it would even be a lechatchila. This person who can hear but he cannot speak, he can't make the brachas because he can't speak. But somebody else could make the brachas. Everybody will say amen, and then this person who can hear but cannot speak can blow the shofar to be mitzi everybody else, even lechatchila. A deaf person who could hear, if he uses a hearing implement, like a trumpet, that's that hearing horn that people would use, chayiv b'shofar, such a person is chayiv in the mitzvah of shofar, because together with that implement, he can hear. Okay, Siv Gimel. Isha Petura, a woman is pater, a woman is not obligated to hear the shofar. Why? Because the mitzvah of shofar is time dependent. You have a certain Siman during which you have to hear the shofar. You have to hear the shofar during the day on Rosh Hashanah. You cannot hear it at night. And we know the famous Mishnah in Masechtas Kedushin, a woman is potter, is exempt from all of the mitzvahs that are time dependent. The role of a woman, the pasuk uses the word beisai. The Torah refers to a man's house, and the Gemara darshans beisai zu ishtai. A man's house is his wife. When the Torah says in the pasuk beisai, his house, sometimes it's a reference to his wife. Why? Because a Yiddish mother makes the home. Not just that she's a homemaker and she goes and she cooks and she cleans. No, she makes the home. She sets the tone in the home. Shema b'ni musar avicha v'al Torah simecha. We tell a child he shouldn't forsake the Torah of his mother. Generally speaking, people would say, what do you mean? It's the father that teaches a child Torah, not the mother who teaches Torah. But that's not true. There's the Torah's imecha. There's the Torah of the mother. The mommy is the one who wakes the kids up in the morning and says, remember to wash negelwasser. Did you put on your tzitzits? Do you know when Zman Kriya Shema is? Are you ready to go to yeshiva? Do you have your svarim? So the mother sets the tone of the home. And that's why a woman is beisai. But by the same token, a woman is bound by things. When the baby cries, she has to take care of the baby. When it's time to make supper, she has to make supper for the family. So a woman cannot be structured to be obligated to fulfill mitzvahs that are time dependent. She can't know that she's going to be able to do something at a certain time. Maybe the demands of the home will overtake her and she won't be able to be mekayim the mitzvah at a certain time. Therefore, mitzvahs that are time dependent, a woman is not chayav in. So a woman is pater from the mitzvah of shofar because it's a mitzvah seishas van grama. Siv Dalet, androgynous moitzi es minoi. An androgynous, an androgyne, is a person that has the physical aspects of both a male and a female. So he could be moitzi somebody else who's an androgynous like him. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cutting, hey, moitzi es minoi. He could be moitzi somebody similar to him, somebody of his own type. The chol androgynous shavin, because every androgynous has the same halacha. They have the same status. Sheyesh lehem zachrus v'nakvus. They have the physical attributes both of a male and a female. V'emu b'chlal zachar. If halachically he's considered a male, kam chaveroi hu b'chlal zachar. Then the other person who's like him is also halachically considered a male. And one male could be moitzi another male in the mitzvah of shofar. However, the androgynous cannot be moitzi a regular person in the mitzvah of shofar to shemahu b'chlal nekeva, because it's possible that the androgynous is halachically considered a nekeva, and if she is halachically considered a nekeva, then she cannot be moitzi a male in the mitzvah of shofar because the woman is not obligated in the mitzvah of shofar. Continues the mechaber. So androgynous moitzi is minoi. Tumtum, a tumtum, who is somebody who we don't know what this person is. We don't know if he's a male or a female. Somehow the genitalia are covered over, and we cannot tell, is this person a male or a female? So tumtum, afilu es minoi enoi moitzi. He cannot even be moitzi another tumtum in the mitzvah of shofar. Why not? Explains the Mishnah Berurah in the Ois Katan Vav. Afilu es minoi, Teshema im yikara, maybe if we would cut open the covering over the area of the genitalia, yimatze shetumtum zen nekeva. Maybe this tumtum who wants to blow shofar would actually turn out to be a female, v'chaveroi zachar, and the tumtum that she is trying to be moitzi in the mitzvah will turn out to be a male, and a female cannot be moitzi a male. Even on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, when essentially the mitzvah of shofar is only a derabanan, still we're machmir, and a tumtum cannot be moitzi, even another tumtum, even on the second day. Miu, however, af b'yom rishon, even on the first day, when the mitzvah of shofar is undoubtedly a daraisa, Im shama zachar mitumtum, if a male heard the shofar blowing of a tumtum, chayzer v'tekeya b'loi bracha, he would have to hear shofar again or blow shofar again, albeit without a bracha, because there's a suffix. Maybe the tumtum that he heard blow shofar was really a zachar, in which case he really was already mekayim the mitzvah. He can't make another bracha. Tumtum v'androgynous after chayavim l'skaya mikamakim lo yavarchu. The tumtum and the androgynous, even though they have to hear shofar, because it could be that they're a male, they shouldn't make a bracha. The bracha hu d'Rabbanan, because the obligation to make a bracha is only a chiyuv d'Rabbanan. Usveika l'kula. When we have a question of a bracha, we always say suffik brachas l'kula, suffik brachas l'hakel, and therefore we don't make the bracha because of the possibility that the bracha would be a bracha of HaTorah. Sif hey, mi shechetziyoi eved v'chetziyoi ben chayrin. Somebody who half of him is an eved, half of him is like an eved Kanani, the chetziyoi ben chayrin, and half of him is an eved Kanani that's already been freed. Well, now that he was freed, he becomes chayiv in mitzvahs completely, like a regular Yisrael. So this person, what happened over here? He was an eved. He belonged to two different people. One of the people that he belonged to gave him a shtar shechrur. He freed him. Okay, so now half of him has been freed, but the other partner still owes him. So half of him is still an eved Kanani. Such a person, he cannot blow shofar even to be moitzi himself. Why not? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and zayin. This person, half of him is an eved. So when he blows shofar, half of that blowing is the blowing of an eved. And an eved cannot be moitzi a non-eved, because an eved is only mechuyev in mitzvahs like a woman. So this eved is potter in shofar. Half of him is potter in shofar, because the mitzvah say shazman grama. The other half of him is chayiv, but he can't even blow to be moitzi himself. Now we go to Sivav. Aval pisha nashim peturais, even though women are exempt from the mitzvah of shofar blowing, yechaylois liskaya, they are allowed to blow shofar. What does this mean? What's at play over here? Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut leches, yechaylois liskaya. Why does the Mechaber have to tell me that a woman is allowed to blow shofar in Rosh Hashanah, even though she has no chiyuv of shofar? What's the chiddush? Says the Chavetz Chaim, v'lo yamrinon, we do not say to kevan de peturais, that since this woman is exempt from the mitzvah of shofar, yesh chilul yomtov b'tekiyasan. Wait a second. If you're not chayiv in the mitzvah of shofar, maybe you're not allowed to blow shofar. Now, there could be a lot of reasons why you're not allowed to blow shofar on Yom Tov. First of all, we know that you're not allowed to play a musical instrument on Shabbos or Yom Tov because of the Gzeira Shema Yitake Klei Shir. Maybe you'll come to fix a musical instrument, which would be the Isser of Tikkun Maneh. You're not allowed to repair a Keli on Shabbos or on Yom Tov. So wait a second. If this woman is not chayiv in shofar, why should she be allowed to blow a shofar? Don't blow a shofar. Maybe there's an Isser D'Rabbanan involved in blowing a shofar. So because of that, the Mechaber tells us no. Afal pisha noshe peturais, even though they're taka not chayiv in the mitzvah, yecholis l'skaya, they're still allowed to blow shofar. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Katches, v'lo yamrinon dekeven de peturais yeshchil yomtiv b'tkiyasan. We don't say that since the woman is potter in shofar, if she blows shofar, she's machal yomtiv. Why taka not? The kainalon, because we know, we say, gadol hamitzuvah ve'oiseh, somebody who's obligated to do a mitzvah, and he is mekayim the mitzvah, is greater mimi she'ena mitzvah va'isa, than somebody who's not really obligated to do the mitzvah, but he does the mitzvah anyway. Alma, we see from there, demi she'ena mitzvah va'isa, that somebody who's not obligated to do a mitzvah, but he does it anyway, nami schar yeshloi, he gets schar. In other words, if the Chazal go out of their way to tell us gadol mitzvah va'isa, the one who's obligated to do the mitzvah and he does it is greater gadol mimi she'ena mitzvah va'isa. He's greater than the one who's not obligated to do the mitzvah and does it anyway. What do you mean? What do you mean he's greater? If the other person is not obligated to do the mitzvah, then that person is not accomplishing anything at all. So why do we have to tell me that the mitzvah v'isa is greater than the eina mitzvah v'isa? Of course the mitzvah v'isa is greater than the eina mitzvah v'isa. The mitzvah v'isa is obligated to do a mitzvah, and he did it. The eina mitzvah v'isa is not obligated to do the mitzvah. So if he does the mitzvah, it's not worth anything. Elamai, no, that's not true. The eina mitzvah v'isa is also being mekayim a mitzvah. Even though he's not chayiv to do the mitzvah, but if he goes ahead and he does the ratzon habayre and he does the mitzvah, l'shem mitzvah anyway, he gets schar. So therefore, Chazal have to tell us, yes, it's true, such a person gets schar, but the mitzvah v'isa is even greater than the eina mitzvah v'isa. And that's why the woman is allowed to blow shofar at Rosh Hashanah. Because even though she's an Einoi Mitzvah V'Isa, she's not obligated to do it, but she does it anyway. She gets schar. She's still being Mekayim a Mitzvah. For who are did cotton, same thing, a minor child. Yachal Iskaya, they're allowed to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Af lechatchila kadeshi yischanich. They could blow shofar even lechatchila if you're trying to teach them how to blow shofar. The Chedis al Kamal v'Siman Tov Kuf Tzadik Vav B'Haga. Okay. So far the Mechaber said here on the bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch Sivav, Alf al pi shenoshim peturais, even though women are exempt from the mitzvah of shofar, yecholos liskaya, they're allowed to blow shofar, and we don't say that they shouldn't blow shofar because possibly blowing shofar is chil yom tov. V'chein, similarly, achar sheyotza kvar, somebody who was already yotza the mitzvah, he already heard shofar on Rosh Hashanah, he was mekayim the mitzvah already. Yachal Iskaya Lahitzion. He's allowed to go ahead and blow shofar to be moitzi somebody else. Aval ein mevarchais v'lo yavarchu lahen. However, women cannot. According to the Mechaber, they do not make the bracha on shofar, and you don't make a bracha for them. In other words, the Mechaber told us so far over here that a woman is exempt from the mitzvah of shofar. Since she's exempt from the mitzvah of shofar, I have to tell you a chiddush that she's allowed to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah anyway. And there's no aspect of chil yom tov. And now the Mechaber also says, somebody who already blew shofar, he was already mekayim the mitzvah, he could blow for women who need to hear shofar blowing. Says the Mishnah Berurah on the bottom of Samad Gimel Amud Beis, Ice cut and test. Somebody who was already mekayim the mitzvah shofar, he heard shofar already. What the Mechaber wants to say is af sheyotza, even though he was already yotza the mitzvah. So why is he blowing shofar now? The same logic. Maybe there's an aspect of chil yom tov on this person blowing shofar. You already heard shofar in shul, so why are you blowing shofar now? Oh, I'm blowing shofar for women. I'm blowing shofar so that the women can hear the shofar. That's okay. We don't say that since this person doesn't need to hear shofar anymore, he was already mekayim the mitzvah, so then if you blow shofar now, he's being over in Issa D'Rabbanan, when he blows for the women. What, the women aren't chayiv in shofar, so why are you blowing for women if you heard shofar already? Maybe there's an aspect of chil yom tov in that. Kamash Malan the Mechaber that no. Why? Because they still are accomplishing a mitzvah by listening to shofar blowing. And therefore, you're allowed to blow shofar for them, even if you were already mekayim the mitzvah. Now we go to Samach Daled Amud Aleph, and the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Yud. However, the Mechaber said, Aval ein mevarchos, but the women cannot make a bracha on hearing shofar blowing. Now don't jump. We know that women come to hear shofar blowing and they make a bracha. This is the das of the Mechaber. This is the opinion of the Mechaber. The Ramah is going to disagree. So here again, a nice cut in Yud in the Mishnah Berurah, in Mevarchos, the women cannot make a bracha. Why not? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, Demaru v'tzivanu. What are the women going to say? Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysav, who sanctified us with his mitzvahs, v'tzivanu, and commanded us, l'shmaya kol shofar. But a woman is not commanded to hear kol shofar. So says the Mechaber, how could a woman make the bracha on shofar? She can't say v'tzivanu. She can't say, and we are commanded. She's not commanded. How could a woman say v'tzivanu if she's not mitzvah in the mitzvah, not midaraisa, not midarabanan? The Isha b'mitzvah shazman grama b'turei saf b'drabanan. Because when we said in Siv Gimel that a woman is potter from a mitzvah shazman grama, she's potter from a mitzvah shazman grama that's daraisa, and she's potter from a mitzvah shazman grama if it's a mitzvah drabanan. So either way, she's potter. So how could she say vitzivanu? How could she make the bracha? Okay, that's the opinion of the Mechaber. But now let's go to the Ramah, the top of Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Hagah. V'aminig, however, the custom is sha'anoshim mevorchos al mitzvah aseh shazman grama, that a woman who does fulfill a mitzvah aseh shazman grama does make a bracha, and she could say vitzivanu, even though technically she's exempt from the mitzvah. And the Mefarshim explain why is this true, because the word vitzivanu doesn't go on specifically women. When a woman makes a bracha and she says asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysav vitzivanu, she's not necessarily talking about herself personally. Vitzivanu means that Klal Yisrael is mitzvah in the mitzvah. So a woman could make a bracha on the mitzvah even if she doesn't have a tzivui, because it's a mitzvah seishas man grama. Because she can thank the Rebbeinu Shalom that Klal Yisrael has a mitzvah of shofar. Okay, now we go to the Ramah. Hagav, aminig is she'anashim mevarchos al mitzvah seishas man grama, that a woman does make a bracha on mitzvah seishas man grama. Al kain, therefore, gam kan, so too over here in Hilchos Shofros, tevarech nala atzman. A woman who's hearing shofar from a man who's blowing for them, they should make the bracha, the women should make the bracha on their own. Aval acherim lo yivarchu lahen. However, other people should not make the bracha for the women to be moitzi them, im kvar yotzu, if those individuals who want to make the bracha were already yotzu the mitzvah. Vein toiken rak l'nashim, especially if the paltikeya is only blowing for women. Avalim toiken l'isham l'chuyev. However, if the paltikeya that's blowing shofar for the women is blowing shofar for a man also, in other words, there's a man who missed shofar blowing, and now this fellow is getting up and he's blowing shofar for the women and for the man. Mevarchen lo yafal pisha kvar yotzu, he could make the bracha for that individual even though he personally was already yotzu the mitzvah of shofar. Kamosha nispar siman tafkuf pei heisif beis Hagah aleph. Okay. Now we go to Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud aleph. So the Ramah said that our minig is that we do make a bracha for women. I'm sorry. The Ramah said that the women do make the brachas for themselves. So women who are hearing shofar, they make a bracha and they could say vitzivanu even though it's a mitzvah seisha azman grama. But a man should not make the bracha for the women if he was already mekayim the mitzvah of shofar. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting it out from kvar yotzu. Valkain, and therefore Yeshayim, there are those that say the Yiskalahem Kaidim Sheyishma Tekiyos Bebeis HaKnesses. There are those that say that the way around this problem, we're assuming now that the women maybe have a difficulty making the bracha. Maybe the women don't know how to make a bracha. And we're saying that there's a problem for the man to make the bracha for the women if he already was Mekayim the mitzvah of shofar. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah over here, there's an eitzah. The eitzah is that let the man blow shofar for the women before he himself heard shofar in shul. That way he wasn't yotze the mitzvah yet, so now he could make a bracha for himself. And when he blows for the women, he'll be yotze the mitzvah too. Aval, however, the Magen Avram Masik B'Shem Maharil, the Magen Avram concludes that according to, he says this in the name of the Maharil, Shalo Yiska B'Shloisha Shayis Rishonos, now you're not supposed to blow shofar during the first 3 hours of the day, Mishum Da'az Mifkadina, because that's when the Rebbeinu Shalom is judging Klal Yisrael. Vein Kedai L'Skaya B'Yechidus. It's not a good idea to blow shofar all alone at the time that the Rebbeinu Shalom is sitting in judgment. Because what you're doing is you're blowing on the shofar and you're reminding the Rebbeinu Shalom, so to speak, look, I'm here, go ahead, judge me. You don't want to be judged as an individual. You don't want to be judged by Yechidus. You want to be judged by the Rebbeinu Shalom when you're together with the rest of the tzibur. So now, what the Chavetz Chaim is saying is, not so simple to say that the man should blow for the women in the morning before he himself heard the shofar in shul and was mekayim the mitzvah. Says the Chavetz Chaim, that's not so simple, because how early could you blow shofar? According to this Magen Avram, you're not supposed to blow shofar during the first 3 hours of the day. Ella, says the Chavetz Chaim, Yiskel had Achar Tekiyah Pesach Knesses. What you should do is blow for the women after the Tekiyahs already took place in Shul. Fehem Yavarchu La'atzvan, and they make the bracha for themselves. Or what somebody could do is, he could have in his mind that he's not being yotze the mitzvah of shofar when he hears the shofar in Shul. And then he could blow for the women after davening, and he'll be mitzi himself and them at the same time. Alright, I thought we would get a little bit further, but I'm going to have to stop over here for tonight. So Mir Hashem, tomorrow we will pick up with Siv Zayin. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Schos of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. Rabbi should said refuas yeshuas and parnasa to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the bias God tzedek b'meherav yameinu amen.